Welcome to the most beautiful chess problems of all time. Today we have a study by Reichhelm, published in 1901 in the American Chess World, and it's White's move. White can win the game. And if we take a closer look at this, if White makes any kind of waiting move or a null move here, then Black can't move any of their pieces and would be stalemated. In other words, we somehow need to find a way to get Black's pieces moving. That's my little hint. But now, feel free to pause the video and try to find the solution. You had the chance to pause the video, and I assume you figured out the first move yourself. Here, you have to move with this h-pawn. Whether you go to h3 or h4 doesn't really matter. Let's play h3, because the black pawn has to capture, if necessary, en passant. And how do we continue from here? Right, now of course we can't move the king up to h2, because if we block the pawn, Black is stalemated again. What we do instead is, we sneakily go to h1, because that allows Black to play h2 here, and now of course we can't capture the pawn again, because that would be stalemate. So we simply sacrifice the next pawn. Black has to capture it. And now we say to ourselves, okay, now we can capture this pawn here, because Black has g3. The deeper plan isn't really clear yet, right? Somehow it seems like we want to get these pawns moving. But what is this pawn supposed to do? We'll figure all of that out soon enough. Now it's White's move, and of course White still can't play g2, nor can they capture on g3, because that would be stalemate. That's why king to g1 is the most sensible try, because after g2 we have another waiting move. And what do we do when we have a waiting move? Right, sacrifice on f4, the next pawn, and say, okay, we play pawn to f5 because then Black can capture it again. And now it gets interesting. Now we capture this pawn, and you can see the problem with this diagonal has kind of shifted to the back. Black now plays f4, and we're not in check at the moment. In other words, we've somehow gained a sort of free tempo. And how do we use this free tempo? Well, now you need a bit of foresight. It's a 4. Why it's a4, we'll get to that later. But for now, we're just making good use of the move, playing a4, because we'll need this move later. Black is kind of playing on autopilot here. There's really not much they can do. f3, the only move. And what do we do now? No, capturing is bad, right? Because otherwise we end up with a stalemate. King to f2 doesn't work either. Same old story. King to f1, because after f2, which move can we play? Based on the logic, you've probably already guessed it. Yes, we play e6, and now we're finally breaking open Black's position. This white, this black, this light squared bishop, this black light squared bishop can now move. So how does it continue? Yes, we do capture this pawn, but now we have to be a bit careful. Oh, suddenly the black bishop appears and threatens to capture the a4 pawn, which we unfortunately just placed there. What should we do about that? Yeah, okay, maybe we should get it to safety somehow, because it will still be useful. You'll see that soon enough. Black plays bishop to c6, and yes, we can still see that Black is basically unable to move, especially with his king. And even though Black has this extra bishop, he will never be able to play for a win. It's really just about how we, as White, can actually convert this and win the game. And we have this very strong pawn here, and with it we need to create certain threats. So we simply bring our king a bit closer. e5, a very nice and well-considered move by Black because it somewhat effectively prevents the white king from advancing further into the position. King to d3, and now let's carefully mention bishop to e4, which is a significant development in this particular game. And now we must not get the idea to simply capture this bishop, because Black would be stalemated. A draw. We don't want a draw. We want to play for a win here. So, what is the most sensible move? We probably need to advance with the king. And the nice thing about this exercise is, once you understand the basic principle, many moves become very, very logical. But you have to sort of figure it out for yourself. Black continues to play. He does have a few options here, but basically it comes down to Black wanting to move the bishop back and forth passively. To be fair, he has to prevent d7. So there really aren't that many options after all. And White continues to move steadily and purposefully closer for the time being, for now. And yeah, what could Black play here? The only thing he really has left is e4, but then comes king to d4, and now black has kind of put himself in a bit of a zugzwang. He would love to just stay put somehow, but he can't. If he moves the bishop away here, we just take the pawn, and that's why black thinks, okay, then I might as well just give up the pawn right away. King takes, and yeah, how does it continue from here? The bishop has to keep an eye on this diagonal, so that this pawn doesn't suddenly run through. That would be pretty tragic for black, but it's still not really clear. How can white win here? Of course, now we somehow bring the king over here. But right at this point, yeah, as white we can't just take the bishop here, because then black is stalemated again. So once again, a familiar motif. So what does white play instead here? Feel free to pause the video again. The correct move for white here is not to capture the bishop, but simply to calmly go to d8. How does it continue? Black just waits and says, hey, you have to prove your winning plan to me. All I have to do is move a few pieces back and forth, and by a few pieces, I mean this bishop. White plays king to c7, and now, well, black can either go to d7 or to b5 here. b5 is actually the more interesting try, because now it comes into play. We can't just play d7, because bishop takes, and after king takes, it's a draw again. Instead, now the magic comes into play. The reason why we advanced this a pawn, you remember, right? It was a few minutes ago, because now we simply play a 6. And let's first take a look at what happens if black captures with the pawn here. Then comes check, king takes, and checkmate. So that's already not really possible, but black still has a few viable alternatives here. Another significant alternative could be to capture here with the powerful bishop in order to establish this as a very solid and robust structure, but then black is a little bit too late to make a meaningful impact. Here comes the promotion and checkmate. The question remains, what happens if black simply thinks, okay, I just need to keep my pieces together, the pawn must not advance, the pawn must not capture here. Then there's another wonderful move to be found. Can you find it? It's pawn to d7, because now this bishop is exactly overloaded. He has to make sure that there's no checkmate threat on b7, and this pawn, which is threatening to promote, yes, he actually has to stop that too. So if he captures here, now, of course, you might get the idea to say, okay, we'll just take this bishop here off the board. That does work too, but there's a very, very beautiful mate in one. With these 3 pawns, supported by the king, the black king is checkmated. And I think that's a very, very beautiful mating pattern that white can take away from this position. That was today's puzzle. Did you manage to solve the puzzle from this starting position? Feel free to let me know in the comments, and I've linked another video for you. Go ahead and click on it, and then we'll see each other again in just a moment.